bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. All right, Fade to Black. Bespoke radio. For the masses. Yeah. How you doing? Today's Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. 19 days into the new year, only 346 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of nowhere. A total undisclosed location. But it is beautiful in here. Yeah. How you doing? I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer, and UnX Networks. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? All right. Tonight, we have very special guests. We've had 3 first-time guests this week. And tonight, rounding it up, Chris Plain, the head science writer for the DeBrief, joins us. As if last night we didn't get our learn on Pete McCarthy. That was a great show. Tonight it continues. Chris Plain is here. Tomorrow night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. All right. The TSL Top 50 radio rankings, talk show radio rankings nationally came out today. And rounding out the top of the list, Clyde Lewis, right? Wow. And ahead of all of the big names, Clyde shot to number 1. And yeah, so there's that. And if you scroll down the list, there's 50 talk show hosts there, and we came in at number 14. And according to Renee, our producer, Renee, and she's on top of everything, man. Renee is just, I mean, you got to get up way early in the morning to get something past Renee. But so she calls me and she says, the last 2 years, you were number 15. So there you go. So we moved up 1 this year, went from 15 to 14. That's pretty cool. Very happy. And I was telling Renee, the cool thing about that list is we are the only show, the only one on that list without a huge network or corporate money behind us. We are truly independent, and that is pretty cool. And the only reason we're on that list in any capacity is because of you Fadernauts and you guys being here with me every single night. So here's to you. Thank you, Fadernauts. And just like I say every time, last show sucked. Tomorrow's show is going to be better. And that's what we do. We just improve and, just tighten those screws and there you go. But number 14, that's not too shabby. Thank you, Fader Knots. You guys are the absolute very best. Okay, tonight Chris Plain is with us. And I'm very excited. I bring up this number 14 ranking thing for one reason and one reason only. I do this show to learn something, and that's what every guest does. They come on the show. I learn. You guys get to watch and listen to me learn live on the air. And that's always been my goal. And if I learn something on the show, so do you. And we learn together. We go and get ourselves an edumacation. That's what we do. It's, this is the Fade to Black diploma. It's what it is. It's the Fade to Black diploma. And I should get some of those printed up. Fade to Black diploma. You graduated. And sign them babies. Because that's what we're doing. And that's so my recommendation to anybody that wants to get smarter, right? You want to get your learn on, come right here. Come right here to Fade to Black. And we're going to do that tonight with Chris Plain. Very excited about the show tonight. Tomorrow night's another Fader night with open lines all night long. Now, also, Lisa Frith. Lisa. I hope you're listening right now, Lisa. Lisa let me know today that she is on her way. Can I say it, Lisa, on the air? Okay, I'll say this. She is on her way to go and pick up her next crystal skull. She might have the best collection out of anybody that I know outside of Carolyn Ford. And I don't know, man, she might even top that one. And then she goes, Jimmy, I can't wait for you to meet, and I know the name and everything. I'm going to keep that private until Lisa makes the announcement. But that's what she's doing. She's leaving tomorrow. I was like, man, take me. I want to go on that road trip with Lisa. Oh, man, it'd be so cool. All right, follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The Sandbox is hashtag F2B on Twitter. Hello to everybody out there listening and watching all around the world. Got my eye on you. I do. All right. Where am I at? Man, I am fully engaged in this cup of coffee tonight. Woo. Okay. It's kind of cold outside, too. It just makes coffee taste better. Got my sweatshirt on. Adidas running pants, like I jog. I look like I jog, though. I go out in public, man. I got the Adidas gear on. I got the shoes. I look like I just came back from the gym. I do. Let's get to the breaking news. Leading off the news tonight are tiger sharks. Tiger sharks are in the news. Yes, oh, my goodness. No, this is in the news right here. Kaz, is that real? King of the Dragon? Oh, my. Oh, that's going to get a retweet. Oh, a crystal dragon head from Carolyn Ford. And, wow, that's it. That's just going to get a retweet. We were talking about dragon skulls the other day. Look at that. Oh, my goodness. I want that. I want that. Come on, Fader Knots. Somebody step up and gift me that. That looks, oh, man. That's really, 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 really nice. Fade to Black diploma right there. P.S. Fader. Palm Springs Fader. That's what that is. You guys figure out who that is. All right. Where am I at? Oh, tiger sharks are in the news. Tiger sharks are starting to move farther up north due to climate change, warming oceans that have historically been too cold for the apex predator, according to a new study. A team of scientists led by the University of Miami found ocean temperatures have been the warmest on record over the last decade, allowing tiger sharks to travel an additional 250 miles northward. That's right. Because of the warmer oceans, sharks are also migrating 14 days earlier to waters along the U.S. northeastern coast, right where they filmed the movie Jaws. That's the part I'm not making up. I didn't want to name cities and ruin their tourism. But yeah. All right. This news broke today. It has been happening all over the place. I'm talking about 5G, and I'm 5G. I'm 5G. I'm just going to let you know. Oh, I'm Wi-Fi right now. I was going to show you my little 5G, right? I'm 5G. Well, just about everybody's 5G, especially if you just got a new phone. But it is in the news. Airlines from Japan, India, and the United Arab Emirates have suspended flights to airports across the United States after expressing concern over the deployment of 5G. Emirates, Air India, Japan Airlines, and All Nippon Airways canceled flights to New York, New Jersey, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Seattle, and other U.S. cities in response to concerns. AT&T and Verizon postponed today's rollout of 5G service near some airports, but not all of them. All right, more breaking news. This is Fade to Black breaking news right here. Scientists say Homo sapiens, a fossil found in Ethiopia in the 1960s, is at least 233,000 years old, which makes it 36,000 years older than the previous estimate. Fossils of the earliest members of our species, Homo sapiens, and Linda Moulton Howe says Homo sapiens sapiens, are exceptionally rare. To date, only 8 sites in Africa have produced fossils of early anatomically modern humans, the oldest of which is known as the Kibish Omo-1 fossil. It has now been redated by a team of experts led by Clive Oppenheimer from the University of Cambridge. The new minimum age of Omo-1 is 233,000 years old, as opposed to the previous estimate of 197,000 years old. They did all of this with ground sediment where the fossil was discovered at that layer. All right. Tucson-based Paragon Space Development Corporation, a longtime NASA contractor, announced last Friday that it is designing and building the environmental control and life support systems for aerospace giant Northrop Grumman for the Habitation and Logistics Outpost, otherwise known as HALO, the crew module of NASA's Gateway project to set up a space station in orbit around the moon as soon as 2023. That is next year. Based on Northrop's Cygnus pressurized cargo spacecraft, HALO will serve as the living quarters for astronauts traveling to and from the moon, and perhaps in the future to deep space and Mars. That's right. It's going down. Remember, Artemis, we're talking about a U.S. moon mission in 2024. It's 2022. So they need to get this in orbit around the moon next year. This is crazy times. Let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to today, Katie Seagal. Katie Seagal is 68, and of course she played Peggy Bundy on Married with Children. America's The Band, Dewey Bunnell, today is 70. Dewey wrote 3 of the greatest songs in the history of music. Well, he wrote a lot more than that, but he did write 3 of the greatest songs in the history of music. He wrote Horse with No Name, he wrote Ventura Highway, and he wrote Tin Man. That's right. Military brat. Him and his buddies, they all were over in Europe, U.S. military base, Air Force, and I think it was like a DOD school. he met his two future bandmates in America in high school. And they got it done, didn't they? One of the greatest bands in history, and all military brats from high school overseas. That's why they named their band America. Our dead guy's birthday today is, moment of silence, please, Robert Palmer, 1949 to 2003, died at the age of 54. Robert, of course, found huge international success with his band, The Power Station. 3 of his hit singles, I Didn't Mean to Turn You On, Addicted to Love, and Simply Irresistible, were accompanied by those videos. You remember with the matching models in the black dresses doing that dance? Directed by Terrence Donovan. You remember those videos. They were the best. Robert died from a sudden heart attack in a Paris hotel room on September 26th, 2003, at the age of 54. Happy birthday, Robert Palmer. When I was a kid, oh man, I got so much to talk about. Okay, when I was a kid, I went to the MTV Awards, Universal Studios, 1985, and Robert Palmer opened that show. Man, I was like in the second row, center stage. It was incredible. On this day in history, 2004, remember Howard Dean? Of course you don't. But on this day in 2004 was the moment of the Howard Dean scream. He was at an energetic rally on the evening of January 19th, 2004, when Howard Dean, Democratic presidential hopeful candidate, emits a noise that ended his career in politics. I would do it now. We all did it then, but I'm not. Fader fact, Nazi rocket scientist Werner von Braun wrote a sci-fi book in 1949 called Project Mars, A Technical Tale. It takes place in the 1980s, and it's about the first human mission to Mars and their encounter with Martians, including the Martian leader named, wait for it, Elon. And that is your Fader fact. Tonight, Chris Plain is with us. We are going to get our knowledge learned on tonight because he's the head science writer for the DeBrief. Tomorrow night, it's another Fader night with open lines all night long, dedicated to Mr. Clifford Mahooty. All right. Let me hit this Rivermoon coffee. RivermoonWellness.com. Fade to Black blend. Third stone. There's Howard Dean. Oh, man. Oh, P.S. Fader. That's good. There's the girls. That's awesome. Kaz got Robert Palmer's women. All right. My Adidas. Okay. The human brain. Probably the greatest creation in the entire universe. And it's ours. We own it. It's that thing between your ears. It gave me the brain, my brain, gave me the strangest vision last night in the dark. Today, I actually remember the whole thing. So right now, I'd like to share it with you, and it is this. What would happen if a scientist took my brain one cell at a time and took it apart, removing a neuron from my brain and placing it in a dish, and reassembled my brain in that dish next door? First, like all brain salad surgery, this entire process would have to take place while I'm awake. So, as this happens, what would I experience? Now, of course, my current brain during this process is still in my skull. It's exposed. And the dish on the table next to me would have to be wired back into my nervous system, and I would experience everything in real time. So, would I get confused slowly? What would happen to my vision? All of my senses, my emotions, my memories? Would everything just slowly fade away? Would my memory transfer and be restored in the new brain? Now, seriously think about what I'm saying here. Really take it all in. Because we have to say, what about my consciousness? My soul? Does it change? Does it stay the same over the time needed to move 86 billion neurons from one place to another? Will my consciousness be revealed to be a part of cells and matter and not something that just travels the universe? Of course, we know that many, if not most, of the science community insist that consciousness is just a part and product of particles, of electricity and chemistry, that there is nothing special or cosmic about it. This is an idea that I don't subscribe to, and I don't think that anybody knows what's really going on here. Now, which takes me to the next chapter of my vision from last night, which is this. After the last neuron is placed in my new brain transfer, will I be the same me as before? I mean, everything is in place, right? Right? So what about my sense of humor, my dreams, everything that I've learned? Can I still play guitar or drive a car? You know, the foods that I enjoy, all of my life's memories, all that makes or made me, me. Or am I now somebody else? Will it just be one big do-over? Now, if science is right and consciousness is just chemistry and particles, would the disassembly and exact, precise reconstruction of my brain create the same magical combination of matter to make me, me? Would at some point, like during the 50-50 split of the transfer, right? We're right at the halfway point. Would there be two of me thinking, right? Two of me being really, really confused because right now I only got a half a brain, right? So it's only half of me, one on each side, equally dumb, with partial memories. Or would both brains combine to make one complete system that would stay balanced through the entire process of the transfer? Or even the crazier side of all of this, what if my new brain wasn't wired into my nervous system from the start? And that the entire process was done when completed. My new brain is then placed back into my skull. All of the nerves are connected, and I open my eyes and I look around. You know what I mean? What do I understand? Seriously. Yes, stuff like this is where my mind goes in the dark as I lie there waiting for sleepy time. And as crazy as all of this may be, as impossible as this sounds, we are probably closer than we think to having the technical ability to pull this off. And someday we will. When that happens, many of the questions we have about us, our soul, our consciousness, will be answered. It's a very interesting. Now, I'm going to share something private with you. Last night, when all of this came to me, it came out of nowhere. Didn't come from something that I just watched, something that I just read. Didn't come from the show. It just came out of nowhere. And I couldn't stop the thoughts. I couldn't stop the vision. And I just kept my eyes shut and I let this whole thing play out. And I had a very strange little sidebar to all of this. Remember when the HAL 9000 in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and Dave Bowman is pulling out the memory cards, right? And HAL is starting to lose it and slurring his speech and saying things. I had a little sidebar like that if this transfer happened like that I would experience dumbness with half memories, half intelligence, and trying to question intellectually what is going on and why can't I function, why can't I smell. All of these things were, and I couldn't stop it. So I thought to myself last night, and it was an ongoing thing. I said, I've got to write this down. This is it's almost a movie, right? Maybe it's already been done. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight with us, Chris Plain, the head science writer over at the DeBrief, is joining us for the first time. I have been reading his stuff. I have been stealing his stuff. He makes me look good. That's right. He's also a comedian. We might talk about that too. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer and UnX Networks. I'll be right back after this short break with our guest, Chris Plain. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from Rivermoon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all Rivermoon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
The new KUNXDB, the UNX Network, bringing you the best in paranormal programming in premium high-definition streaming audio and video. Log on to the network at unxnetwork.com and check out the growing lineup of programs, including Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and many more. Sign up for the free UNX newsletter, follow the UNX blog, or pick up the latest edition of the UNX magazine. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So check us out at unxnetwork.com. Tap the show page and the calendar so you never miss your favorite live shows and podcasts. We are your portal for all things paranormal. The X, explaining the unexplained.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Chris Plain is here, head science writer over at the DeBrief. Tomorrow night, it's Fader night, open lines all night long. Tonight, I'm going to get my learn on along with the rest of you. We're going to take a deep dive into all things science tonight. UFOs, UAPs, defense, our agencies, what's going on out there, and how it may apply, in my opinion, to disclosure in 2022. Chris is a self-described science nerd. He began his writing career in 1991 as a member of the UCLA Comedy Club. That's a good place to start. Over the next 3 decades, he has written for the stage, screen, TV, and radio, covering topics as varied as commercial space travel, UFOs, Los Angeles Lakers, Cedric Ceballos. You remember Cedric Ceballos? Okay, he's nodding yes. I got a Cedric Ceballos story. I'll share that with you. In 2015, he released his debut novel, Whispers of Fate, the first in a planned 7-volume epic fantasy saga, the Heirloom Ories, with the second and third books released in 2016 and 2018, respectively. His latest novel, a science fiction adventure called Titan, is scheduled for release in the fall of 2021. The fall of 2022, Chris says. Dyslexia is a terrible disease, man. We need your money to buy hats. So I want everybody to please donate to the Christopher Plain Fund. He also contributes regularly to UAPresearch.com, writes his own blog, and, of course, over at the DeBrief. His links are right there at JimmyChurchRadio.com. I would like to welcome to the first time, Fade to Black, Chris Plain. Chris, good evening, man. How you doing?
Jimmy. Good to hear you. Good to see you. How are you, my man?
I am fantastic. And let's just get straight to it. You get the first-time guest disclaimer. So let's get that out of the way. Chris, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, well, we're going to end as friends.
Sounds good to me.
Is that too much pressure?
No, you know what? Actually, Jimmy, that's perfect. And before you get too deep into whatever rabbit hole you want me to run down with you, I just wanted to give a 2-minute sneak peek to the Fabernautical engineers, and anybody studying the Fabernautical sciences, that how this process actually occurs. Because not everybody, you have how many listeners, I have no idea. But very few of us are going to get that opportunity to jump on here as a guest. So I just wanted to take them through quickly how this came about in this process, if you don't mind. And if you feel this is going nowhere, too bad. Because I'm not getting paid.
All right.
So,
fair enough.
So we have a couple of friends, co-workers, comrades in arms, Micah Hanks, who I work with over at the DeBrief.
Yep.
And, of course, UNX superstar Christina Gomez.
Yes.
Who's a friend of both of ours and a coworker of mine over there at the DeBrief.
Mm-hmm.
So this first phase of this whole thing, I'll call this is the pre-invite. So before you even get invited to the Jimmy Church show, am I killing you here?
I'm nervous.
No, nothing bad, nothing bad.
Okay.
Before you get invited to the Jimmy Church show, you get the reach out. So like Christina gives me the, hey, Jimmy's been following your stuff. He really likes reading your articles. You think you might be interested. So I naively, I'm like, yeah, what time's he thinking? What days is he thinking? Oh, no. He wants to, he will call you and invite you and he'll bring you on. So, okay. So that's even before I've been invited, I've been pre-invited.
Yeah, that's pretty close to how it actually works around here.
I love it. So Christine, so I get on the phone with Jimmy, right? You'll have plenty of chances to talk. You're on here every night. So I get on with Jimmy. He calls me up, right? He's like, Chris, Jimmy Church, I'm in my tracksuit, between cigarettes, and I got 8 minutes of oxygen. So I said, all right, Jimmy, what's going on? So he invites me. He said, I'd love to have you on the show, been following your stuff. Pretty much, covered the exact same ground that Christina did, right? Because now there's a reason to have 2 phone calls. So he extends me a date. We agree to the date. We pick the time. And what happened, Jimmy?
I canceled you.
So he cancels, right?
I did.
So
I canceled.
right,
I called back and said, Chris, another time.
Yeah, I say cancel, I talk like an hour after he invited me, right? We're like, I haven't even got done telling my wife who the F Jimmy Church is.
Oh,
right?
man.
And she knows, of course, because I listen to this all the time.
Right.
So I tell her, very excited, changes dates on. It's all right, no problem. We're changing dates. I asked 2 things. I said, what time am I on? And how long is the interview, right? So he tells me, he goes, all right, Chris, I'm going to have you in the green room. Faber Nautical Engineers, pay attention. This will be on the final exam. So he tells me 6:30 you're on, green room. Show starts at 7, 2 hours. I said, I can do 2 hours. Done 2 hours on these other things, no problem. 6:30 comes around. We connect. We're on for a few minutes. He says, all right, you're good to go. Call you at 7:30.
And see, and this
I
is what
spent an hour drinking, and then
I know, and so, and here's the deal, and that's exactly how it all went down, absolutely. But here's the thing, Chris, is that I have done somewhere north of 1,500 interviews.
Oh, I bet.
That's a crazy. I think this is show number 1550 tonight, and I'm not even sure about the numbers, but when you get to that level of repetitiveness, you are in a well-oiled machine that just goes. And sometimes I lose sight of what it's like to be on the other side of the fence as a guest. Me, I'm just like, okay, next Tuesday, 6:30.
Show starts at 7. We're good to go.
Right. And have a great weekend.
And what's so funny is, having done a number of interviews in the last couple of years, I have a lot of these where they have you come into the green room like 5 to 10 minutes before the show, right?
Right.
So when you initially told me 6:30 and that the show starts at 7, I go out to my wife, I go, this guy's a professional. How needy is he? Needs me in the green room for a half an hour? What are we gonna? Am I gonna do a tarot reading?
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna do? Is there a quick card game, or do I have to do an oath or something?
Yeah.
Even I was like, 30 minutes of twiddle and thumb seems like a long, pre-interview. I had notes ready.
Yeah. See, like I said, I lose sight of, and thank you for that. You know what? I need to get back to what is real. And have respect for everybody else's environment, so they totally understand. Because I think that everybody knows everything, or you can read my mind. All right.
Well, I do know everything, and I can read your mind, but in this case, I wasn't paying attention.
Now, and this is great though, because one of the things that I enjoy is when I have guests on. And this happens more often than you would think, but having guests on that are professionals in their craft, whether it's theater, comedy, film, television, radio, and they have been doing something in the entertainment world for a while, and they know how to have a conversation. And it's one of my favorite things to do is to have a guest on like yourself. For you, it's comedy and stage and performance, and you've been doing it since, well, we're going to talk about that in a second. But that natural banter that goes back and forth, it is so much fun for me, and it translates right back to the audience. So this is a good point to ask the obvious question: what came first for you? Was it comedy, or was it the fantastical?
I started watching In Search Of in 1977.
Right.
And I was born in 69. So that show came on when I was 8 years old. And that changed my whole world. There was no Jimmy Church. There was no Fade to Black. There was no Christina Gomez. There was no Micah Hanks. You couldn't turn on Ancient Aliens or any of these things. Whatever level you feel about these different productions, there are a myriad of options across History Channel and Learning Channel and just so many sources of information available. I didn't know I had an interest in this, but I saw that first pilot episode, and they talked about UFOs. And my father's a really smart guy, was sitting there with me. And he was like, this seems pretty real. It really felt, and anyone who watched that show back in the day, it was that.
Well, plus it was Spock. It was Spock,
right?
You know, and that was
Leonard Nimoy was hosting every episode.
It was
and he
Spock.
had that gravitas. He had that Jimmy Church. I have cigarettes on every break voice.
Yes, you know? he did. And to your point, I mean, very directly, In Search Of, because it was Leonard Nimoy, suddenly had the street cred of like 60 Minutes. Right? It was like,
right, totally.
This is a magazine, presentation on UFOs and ancient Egypt and everything else that they covered on that show that were these fringe topics, presented in a way that this was just like your nightly news, and it was incredible.
It's the first time you would hear Anunnaki, or the first time you would hear crystal skulls, or you would hear these sort of things. That was the first place that really, Jimmy, if you think there was this serious to semi-serious discussion about UFOs in the late 40s and the 1950s, if you look at TV and movies, by the 60s, although Blue Book hadn't given up yet, they were getting loose with it. Culture had given up on it as a serious topic, even before I was born. This show on prime time on network TV, tackling all of those topics, they called it astral projection, but they were talking about remote viewing in 1978, and they were really talking about the CIA and these various programs. The information was really ahead of its time for what they were doing.
Yeah, I went back, and this was a couple of years ago, and I went back and I watched all of In Search Of.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe, and I did all of this at the same time, Chris. After that, I'm in the middle of that, and then I went further back, and I did all of the first two seasons of Star Trek. I did the Twilight Zone, and then I went back and watched Chariots of the Gods. Wow. And I realized since then I've watched Chariots of the Gods probably 4 times a year for the last 3 or 4 years. I watch it all the time.
Wow.
It is so timeless, and In Search Of hit me the same exact way.
So that
unreal.
was the start for me at that age. But comedy, really, I did plays and theater in the ensuing years, all throughout the 80s. And, I'm a heavy guy, so I you've seen my picture. People have seen me do other interviews. I'm a big guy, so I was a Chris Farley character on stage in the 1980s, and there's a lot of reward to that. There's a lot of laughter that goes with that, but you are shoehorned into a clown role. So I went into stand-up in college, in 1991 at UCLA, and that's where that. But I never lost the interest in UFOs. It's funny. I tell people that some of those mysteries from my youth, like the Bermuda Triangle or the Loch Ness Monster, some of those things, there's only so much that could be done to research them that at some point, I think I didn't discount them. They just fell away from my interest. But UFOs were something that was always there. There were always new reports, even if it was in the background. Mm-hmm. I remember the NIDS website coming up, right? 1995. The internet was still relatively new and functional in the 90s. And you could go on there and read case histories and read studies that the guys were doing. I didn't foresee the connection to Bigelow and Greer and all the things that came out of that at the time. But yeah, that stuff was always there. I think there was this huge moment in 2001 with the press club event.
Yes.
With Greer bringing all those military and FAA type witnesses. That was really, in a lot of ways, kind of the first step to what we're seeing now. The first progressive step where all of these people were suddenly talking about it. So yeah, I think comedy is something I've been paid to do a lot over the years and something I've enjoyed doing a lot over the years. But UFOs is just like a personal interest that's always been there. And it's how I ended up at the DeBrief. I mostly write science over there. I don't cover a lot of UFO material unless it overlaps with NASA or one of the big science agencies, which it occasionally does. But it's how I got into this community. It's how I joined up with the guys over there. And it's been with me since 1977.
Did you incorporate UFOs and ET into your comedy? And I say that because I watch a lot of stand-up comedy. And over the last year, it seems like every comedian that I see now will tell a UFO or ET joke in their act. And I don't remember this in years past. So if it's gone into pop culture with stand-up comedy, you've pretty much, you're a global thing now. Did you have UFOs and ET in your stand-up?
Not really, but I'll tell you what's interesting. Every once in a while I might touch on it in a like the corny way that people do, like an alien abduction reference or something. But I didn't have any material written about it. Here's the insight, though, that I think I can give you here, Jimmy. When I was at the UCLA Comedy Club, we got to have these guest hosts come on and host the show. So there'd be an actual, because we were in LA, right? We could get an actual mainstream celebrity comedy host, like a David Spade or somebody. They would come in, host the show, Sarah Silverman, and then all the comedians would we would battle for the number of spots, but a half a dozen of us would get to go up every week and perform with these headliners. One of those headliners was Jerry Seinfeld. And at that time, it was just when his show had started, but they were not sure if it was the Seinfeld TV show was going to make it. It struggled in the ratings its first year, and it had all this great critical acclaim. And we got the opportunity as student comedians to sit around and pick his brain. And he said, if you're going to be serious about comedy and you really want to do this for a living, he said, you just need to treat it like any other job. And what he does every morning is he gets up, he has breakfast, does his morning routine. He is at his desk by 9 a.m., like a 20th century job, right? He does comedy writing from 9 a.m. to noon, has his lunch, does it in the afternoon, and whatever phone calls, business are mixed in, of course, you do your business. But that is dedicated time every day. And in the 80s, what that meant was, or early 90s, was going through all the newspapers. What is everybody talking about right now? So in many ways, if you go to a comedy club, you're just seeing like a mini version of what happens in the writer's room at The Tonight Show or in the writer's room at Jimmy Kimmel or one of these, where the comedians go through and go, what is everybody talking about? And it's not always just cultural stuff. Lots of times it's something like UFOs that really for the last 4+ years now is on everybody's news feed. And I think when it really went into hyperdrive in the last year and a half during the pandemic, with a lot of these legislative movements and DOD movements and things like that, comics are going in the newspaper just like a job, and they're going on their website. They're going to Huffington Post, or they're going to their Yahoo feed, or they're going to their Daily Beast, or wherever they get their news, and they're digging through there going, what are people talking about? And yeah, if you go to a comedy club on any given night and you were told nothing else that's going on in the world, if you sit through 3 hours of stand-up, you'll know what's going on in the world. Because across those comics, whether they're interested in fashion or music or science or whatever, they're going to talk about what's in the news now.
Yeah, and David Chappelle's latest Netflix special, which I'm sure you've seen, and it's great.
Sure.
He goes, so, I got COVID. I had to quarantine for 2 weeks, and I'm locked up in this hotel room, and for 2 weeks I watched YouTube UFO videos. and how mainstream is it when you've got, Chappelle on what's going to be undoubtedly the biggest Netflix comedy special of the year with the most views and the biggest reach, and it's Chappelle saying UFOs are real, which is what came out of his mouth, by the way. It was pretty amazing. Now let's do this too as well before we get to the break. UFOs are one thing, comedy is one thing, and then science is another. Now, I don't have a degree in science. I don't have.
Nor do I.
I don't. I think that sometimes I might be smarter than some of these physicists out there. And I do study this subject. I study it a lot, and I read so much into this subject. What got you into the hard sciences part of this?
It's interesting. I had a discussion right when I first started writing at the DeBrief. I had a discussion with an unnamed scientist who's an astrobiologist working for NASA. Now, this person's job is to look for life on other planets, right? And I'm lining up an interview with them to talk about their job, and they come back to me and cancel the interview. Now, this is the only interview that's been canceled since I've worked at the DeBrief, other than, you flaking on me yesterday.
Yes.
So, she more or less, after some back and forth emails trying to get to the nuts and bolts, she was uncomfortable with the UFO coverage on the DeBrief. Now, keep in mind, 98, literally mathematically, 98% of our articles do not cover that topic. Like literally 2 out of 100 will address that topic. In some months, it might be 4 out of 100 articles, but it is a very small number. At the beginning, it's true we were a little heavier. So when I was told this by this astrobiologist, I said, I tried to get them to come on and give me, and they just flat wouldn't do it. What I think is ironic, and I tell people this all the time, readers that come to the DeBrief for UFOs are reading about science all day. They're coming and learning about hard science. That's what happened to me. I'm a guy who was watching In Search Of, and they're talking about the pyramids. So I'm reading books I can on the pyramids. But among those books are not just Robert Skoke and Graham Hancock, but are these mainstream scientists, even Zahi Hawass, collaborating with people. So you would learn the mainstream component. I tell people all the time I like watching Ancient Aliens, not so much for the theories, because I think we all have our own, and although some are interesting, but other than watching George Tsoukalos, who is one of the best paid professional comedians who doesn't actually know he's a comedian on TV. Yes? Do you have to get the break?
No. I was just contemplating and pondering the significance of that statement.
Yeah, so they talk about mainstream, like it's the only TV show where you're going to see inside these pyramids in Vietnam, or inside these, various structures in Mexico, these Olmec, so you're going to see mainstream archaeology covered with a flashy model that sells the show. But what you do is you introduce a bunch of people to that mainstream science. And I can tell you, in the time I've been at the DeBrief, my DMs and my private messages I get from readers and emails I get from readers have gone from asking me when are we going to see the triangle photo to what are the chances that the James Webb telescope is going to spot signs of life around another planet. Now let's keep in mind, I want to see the triangle photo like nobody's business, right? Like, I happen to work with people that give me a fair amount of confidence that that's a real photo and that real people have really seen that. So don't get me wrong. But at the same time, this crawl that we're going through of looking for life in the clouds of Venus, looking for life on Mars, looking for signs of life around TRAPPIST-1, an exoplanet system that's 40 light years away, these sort of things will build to the point, because you don't hear mainstream scientists discounting UFOs the way they used to.
Right.
Because when they used to discount them, we didn't even know they were planets around other stars.
That's
we definitely didn't know there'd be ones in the habitable zone that were rocky. We didn't know they were going to be commonplace and everywhere. So much information has progressed that what happens when we start finding life, even microbial life, across the galaxy? Then you get to a discussion with scientists where you say this. So you're telling me life is everywhere. You're telling me you believe life is everywhere. A pretty common position by scientists now, by the way. And you're telling me Earth has only been here for 4 billion years, but the cosmos has been here for almost 14. So some of that life has a 10 billion year head start on us, give or take. You're telling me somewhere in there hasn't been advancement and technology? So what you're really telling me is you don't believe in evolution. You think evolution only happens here? Because if life is prevalent across the cosmos, and most of that life had a pretty good head start on us, because we've only been around in human form for 500,000 years.
Yes.
It's a really, you start getting to the point where you start checking boxes on the Drake equation, right? And you get to the end of that box and you go, they're probably everywhere. They're probably more advanced than us. And if so, we send probes everywhere at minimum, even without warp drive, even without the most exotic of propulsion. There are definitely probes here checking us out, or there is no life anywhere and we're living in a simulation, because there's really the option, or there is a God, he or she built this crazy cosmos and just put us in it. Because if this universe operates on the natural laws, if we look at other star systems, we see planets with water in the atmosphere. The material that we're all made of is so common. The material of our solar system is so common across the cosmos. There's almost no scientific argument against life in the cosmos anymore.
No, there isn't. And to think, with that 10 billion year jump start, where we here on this planet, I've got to take a break in 15 seconds, that on this planet that we've done great things, that we've been to the moon. And we have been milking that achievement for a long time, by the way. Going to the moon, when you look at the universe, I mean, that to me, to aliens, to ET, that kind of achievement, that's like going out to your driveway and opening up the trunk of your car. That's the achievement we've done. We haven't done anything spectacular, not yet. And ET is way out in front of us, and there's a lot of it out there. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, the one and only Chris Plain. We're going to talk science when we come back. And this is the deal. If I learn, you learn. That's just how it works. On the Game Changer and UNX Networks, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, The X.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to forbiddenknowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30 days free on forbiddenknowledge.tv today.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer, Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're also Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Chris Plain, head science writer over at the DeBrief. And this is the deal. Before we move on, I was going to save this for tomorrow night, but it's over in the chat room right now. I'm glad you're sitting down, Chris. Check this out. Tomorrow, Linda Moulton Howe.
Wow.
80 years old.
Wow.
Right?
Right?
80 years old, and I'm going to be with Linda in a couple of weeks over at the Conscious Life Expo. We're doing a bunch of events together, and And she's one of the best. And I just did a movie with her, and it was awesome. And she's somebody I know pretty well. We do a lot of hanging out and a lot of information sharing and conversations. She ain't 80. I'll just say that. That is what, obviously 80 is the new 40, apparently. But so, yeah, Linda Moulton Howe, 80 years old tomorrow. So
this is the coolest thing about the Jimmy Church Show, the Micah Hanks program, these ones I listen to, is you guys were here before 2017. So, and I got no problem with people that have come on since news became big. No problem. But the people like you that have been there through that arc, I was always this guy. I would see it on TV. I would hear it on Coast to Coast.
Mm-hmm.
I would play with it on the internet. But these were people I didn't know. These were people. And meanwhile, when I talk to Micah Hanks and I can mention, it doesn't matter. I can mention Stanton Friedman. He'll go, oh, yeah, Stanton, I had lunch with him. But Linda Moulton Howe, I go, oh, I was at a crop circle, cattle mutilation thing, whatever. Boom, like right to these people. It doesn't matter. Bud Hopkins, oh, yeah, Bud. I'm at Whitley Strieber. It doesn't matter. And that's amazing because there was this community of people holding the torch, keeping the flame going from the end of Blue Book forward, really. I mean, you talk about the Invisible College. It really was these two components of people within the military-industrial complex continuing to go, things are flying around, we don't know what they are, and they're doing stuff, we don't know how it works. That was always the working in the background. There was the intellectuals, the actual Invisible College, they call it, looking at it scientifically. But there was these people brave and out on the front lines. There were people doing these, George Norrie and Art Bell and these sort of people that were out there, Linda Moulton Howe, these people that were either talking about it, broadcasting about it, or actually researching it, that carried that through the dark times. And now, when we're in a place that feels, I tell people this all the time, one of the benefits of age, one of the benefits of living through Philip Corso's book coming out in real time, Bob Lazar's book coming out in real time, that first Whitley Strieber Communion coming out in real time, and living through those moments in history gives you a perspective. And my perspective within that is, this is unprecedented. These last 4 years are like nothing in any of that 48 years I lived before now.
Yeah, okay. I would say 5,000 years.
Right.
And here, and I'm, it's funny you say all of that because I'm still a fanboy, and I don't know how my phone. If you ever get the chance, Chris, come on over to the house, just hang out with me for 6 or 8 hours, and watch my phone, and see who I'm still a fanboy, and these people that I grew up with, right, are calling me, asking me questions. It's like, wait a minute here. It's supposed to be the other way around. And I have not lost sight of it, man. I'm completely humbled by all of that. But for me to be able to reach out, and have these conversations is just extraordinary to me. And I'll never get over it. Every time that they're on this show or we have a conversation, I'm still thinking to the back, don't lose your shite, church. You got to be professional here, right? But I'm just as humbled. Now here's the thing. Talking about science and getting into these subjects, when you're a writer, writing about these subjects, you have to be as correct as you can be, as your research allows. These days, you're not allowed mistakes, right?
It's true.
I texted you earlier today. You only get one hall pass, right?
Yeah, right.
Did I not text you that earlier today?
You did. And when I was trying to be 5 minutes late for a 30-minute green room hangout that seemed completely pointless.
And I gave him 2 hall passes. But today you don't get that hall pass. You have to be correct. And when you are writing science articles that have 500,000, 1 million clicks on it, you are exposed to people that are out there to also bust your bubble, come at you, and check your facts. And so let's start right here. A warp bubble. Just that right there opens the door to some amazing science, some heavily researched subjects by individuals that have 10, 15, 20 years of professional education behind them and research. And now you're going to choose to write about it as the head science writer.
A layman.
Yeah, you've got
a veritable. Like my degree is in political science, which has nothing to do with actual science.
Right. And so I'm going to start right there.
Yeah.
What's your definition of a warp
whether
bubble?
Intentionally or not, Jimmy, by bringing up the warp bubble story, which is my biggest read story at the DeBrief, it gets to the heart of exactly what you're talking about. On two levels. First of all, yes, understanding the science, like the ability to read a research paper that is heavy in physics, heavy in chemistry, heavy in the science that I'm writing about, a lot of cognitive science material, things like that I write about, really is just born out of a lifetime of interest, just born out of being somebody who read science. You know, when I got hired at the DeBrief, I said, I go to phys.org and archive.org for fun. Like, I read this stuff because I'm curious about it. I don't have any fantastical education or amazing intellect. I just have an excellent, a high level of curiosity about science and a breadth of reading material, an autodidact level of information that when I talk to scientists, they can tell I at least understand what they're trying to tell me. So if I don't understand what they're actually telling me, we share enough vocabulary and we share enough ability that they can get me there. So in the case of the warp bubble story, that's an amazing story. I have written about a separate story about how Twitter is the perfect place to not put disinformation, where Facebook is great for disinformation because the groups are so much more curated, where Facebook or Twitter is so much more open that if you put up something that's wrong, people will shoot you down.
That's right.
So here comes my warp bubble story. And without rehashing the whole history of it, I spent months and months working on that story. I interviewed multiple people, scientists. I had outside scientists looking at the research, confirming, because I knew if I'm going to publish a headline that says scientist creates first warp bubble in a lab, that is probably going to go beyond my typical 50,000 viewer type of article, my everyday article, right? I know this is the type of story that has the chances to go to factors of that. So I know I have something here. And the person that is behind this story is Harold Sonny White, one of the warp drive pioneers who worked at NASA, created EagleWorks, brought all of that research with him from NASA, the only NASA scientist to work on, to head a project on warp drive while at NASA. And in his private lab, while doing research for the Pentagon on something else completely, they saw what they believe in their research was a warp bubble. I misunderstood him. I thought they had physically created. Now, in his mind, the difference is technical. That they have laid the blueprint, this is how you build it, and they're probably going to build it. But to me, I took it as that. So it's interesting you brought up about getting facts right, because of the probably 200 plus articles I've written at the DeBrief over the last year, little over a year, I've had maybe 6 or 7 where a fact is wrong, and I will get an email or a text message. And it's almost always the misspelling of someone's name, or you got their title wrong, or I don't work there anymore, that's an old bio. You know, like you read my book bio from a year ago when Titan was supposed to come out last year, but I started working at the DeBrief. It got put off to this year. Mm-hmm. So I'm sometimes just working with old information. But on this one, I had a critical point that the story was still the story, but this critical point was off, right? So I put the story out. We have this amazing reaction, right? It's taking off. I'm getting text updates from Tim McMillan on how many viewers are on the site, and our web guy's going, this story's exploding. Chrissy Newton, our PR host, is reaching out to me saying, I'm getting contacted by media. People want to talk about this warp bubble. What happens is on Twitter, along with the enthusiasm, is this small but well-educated group, when you look at their profiles, that are coming on going, this is not how I read this research.
Right.
I'm looking at Chris's article, and I see they've laid the blueprint for a warp bubble, what they think is a warp bubble. And Sonny White knows a warp bubble. But they haven't created this thing in the lab yet, right? They have laid the foundation for it. And to Sonny, the difference, as he told me, was semantics. But as a news reporter, putting a headline based on what he told me in interviews, and that, when I reached back to him, he, said, okay, yes, I probably, there was a misunderstanding of what analog means. And again, it's a perfect example. By not being educated formally in science, I didn't know that term was used a certain way. So when I congratulated him on an analog, he says, no, we haven't created an analog. We have created a real-life warp bubble, albeit a tiny one, but we have created a warp bubble. That quote opens my story, right? We have created a warp bubble. So that's my headline. As it turns out, they have created the blueprint for one.
Yes.
And when I say congratulations on an analog is something they do use in science, like an analog of a black hole in the lab, because if you create a real black hole, it'll suck up the whole lab, right? So they have to create what's called an analog. So there's just a minor difference, my lack of formal education specifically in that area, and just a slight misunderstanding, and it was found immediately. Like scientists, and I got I got the standard like, oh, dude, you got it wrong sort of Twitter stuff. But I would get DMs, because my DMs are always open, at Plain Fiction, and at Plain_Fiction on Twitter. So I get DMs from scientists within a very quick amount of time saying, hey, Chris, this is a mistake. This one segment of your story is not right. So I reach out to Sonny. After a lot of back and forth, we correct the story. I did a full interview on it on the UCR, the Singularity Lab, their collateral show, and I gave the whole backstory to it. But yeah, that is, while I'm proud of the fact that I read these complex, there are times I walk out to my wife, and I've been in the office all day, and there's smoke coming out of my ears. And I go, I've been reading about this study on the Martian meteorite, and I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what and sometimes I go back in and I'm Googling individual words going, what does that mean? But by the time I put a story out, I feel like I understand it, that I know what they're talking about. I know what the researchers have found, whether it's the gateway to consciousness, which is something I wrote about, whether it's how psychedelics can help with depression, or whether it's a warp bubble. I feel like I know the subject. I've digested a lot of information about it. I read the studies. I read analysis. I read all kinds of information, watch videos, listen to these people sometimes, and try and put that in a 800-word to 1,200-word blurb that my audience can get, and that they can read it and go, okay, this new cancer treatment is giving people night vision, and now I know why. I don't need a chemistry degree or a cognitive science degree. I just know that this thing's kicking these little proteins off in the eye that are making it more active, and people are seeing at night when they get this cancer treatment.
Now, and by the way, I was about 10 of those clicks on the warp bubble article.
Fantastic.
And I also, I want to stay right here, though. I also watched how viral the story went throughout all of the other media outlets around the world. And that was the headline, right? Scientist creates warp drive.
Yeah.
It was right. And is it clickbait? I don't consider it that. And this is my question, is that once you put out that idea to other physicists and to other scientists out there with an article like this, and they can go back and not only read the article, but think about their own current research, suddenly we've got everybody considering warp drives, warp bubbles, and considerations for alternative propulsion systems. And that's how you start with the germ of an idea, which is what this article presupposes.
I think I think, unfortunately, the only thing I'll disagree with you on is because I got it wrong, it ended up functioning as clickbait. It ended up functioning as, and I think that's a critical point, that it functioned as people going, hey, look, scientists built a warp ship, and they clicked on it, and they found out about the blueprint the guy had built for a warp. You know, here's the plan to build one that would actually work and testable. It was still a critical step, and something I could have written an entire... It still would have been a great story. Still would have been, but it would have been a slightly modified headline, but the story was still the story that in the science world, especially alternative propulsion, the vast majority of these live purely in theory. They live in this world of formulas and, it would take this much exotic matter and this much negative energy and X, Y, and Z, and voila, you got a warp ship. Here was a guy who had been as deep in that theory as anyone, had the Alcubierre white warp drive as Miguel Alcubierre, the first mathematician to put it together, Mexican mathematician, and Harold G. Sonny White, the Alcubierre white warp drive. So here's the guy as deep in that theory as anyone. And here he is saying, we have a testable, buildable, microscopic scale, but a minuscule, but not microscopic. We're talking micrometers, not nanometers. So we're talking a physically little tiny warp ship, but a physical thing that we can now, put out to people and say, if you have the lab, if you have the facilities, because he's still knee deep in this, it's not Air Force Research Labs. I forget who's funding him, but he's still knee deep in a study and he can't jump over and go build this little thing. But as you're saying, he's now put out to the world, to the people that study alternative propulsion, to those engineers who build these testable things. Here's how you make it. And he even told me, here's the 3D printer I would use. Here's the material I would use. Here's the sizes it would be. Here's the tests we would run. He gave me all of that. So, ultimately, it moved it from theory to us, if you watch The Big Bang Theory, you had theoretical physicists like Sheldon who thought up crazy ideas, and you have applied physicists like Leonard who figure out how to build that, and then you have engineers like Wolowitz who go and build the thing, right? Mm-hmm. This is now at the applied engineering stage as far as this. So it's a significant quantum leap for warp drives, but yes, it still functioned as... So I don't love the fact that the headline was wrong, because it's as one of the more successful pieces I've written. But at the same point, super proud of the research, and I think you're right that it now serves as a highway. And I got a lot of positive feedback from scientists who said essentially what Sonny said, which is you took the time to try and understand this information and you conveyed something very critical to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. Now, and it was picked up in France. It was picked up in a bunch of countries because it was a big story.
It was a huge story. And before we get to the break, we've got about 5 minutes, is this. The Alcubierre and the original ideas behind that drive were unreal. And the way that he presents it. But he also, I'm going to use the word debunked. He debunked his own idea when he said, okay, this is all cool, it's possible, but it would take the energy of the known universe, right, to power this thing up. And so that just killed the drive idea. And when we look at, the collection of negative matter that you would need to power these drives and open up a wormhole, and the ideas behind this is that we would then see galaxies disappear because they needed the energy from said galaxy, right? Mm-hmm. It can't be that way.
What's interesting is how far we've... Okay, go ahead.
But let me finish, though. E.T. is able to do this in a much more simplistic way. It's easy for them to do. They're not burning up a galaxy to put into their fuel tank. There's something else going on, don't you think?
Well, I do. I think there's no doubt. And I think what's critical here is, the short amount of time we've come from the 1990s when Miguel Alcubierre, the Mexican physicist, wrote this first math, to when Sonny White refined it was only a decade later in 2005. And when he refined that, he took that negative. There was one refinement that had brought the negative energy down from like a galaxy size to the size of Jupiter.
Right.
So like, all right, here we have this theoretical matter that we've never created, that's never existed anywhere, and theoretically has this type energy. And if we could create a Jupiter amount of it, we could fuel our warp drive. Sonny White got that down to about the size of an SUV. So now that's what the Alcubierre White warp drive refinement. And it was just by changing the shape to a toroid donut shape that they would put. It was literally just calculus that no one had done before, because nobody was even working on this warp drive with any math before Alcubierre wrote it. So yeah, I think anyone who would be using it, if a practical one has been made by any species anywhere, I think it's maybe even very possible they're using something called a low power warp drive, which people have proposed and I've written a little bit about, and NASA veteran Jacob Sarfati has talked about. And that may have been the Tic Tac. The Tic Tac may have been a low power warp drive who was using that to manipulate, and that's why it could go from 80,000 feet to 50 feet in the flash of an eye without exploding the entire ocean around it when it released the energy needed to go from 80,000 to 50.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Chris Plain. It's going to be one of those shows. It's already started off that way. I always learn something. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Chris Plain, on the Game Changer and UNX Networks. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with it.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
This is Jimmy Church, and I personally invite you to the 2022 Conscious Life Expo this February 4th through the 7th, live at the LAX Hilton in Los Angeles, California. This year, we have the most exciting speakers, including Whitley Strieber, Adam Apollo, Billy Carson, Daryl Anka and Bashar, William Henry, Caroline Corey, Susan Slaughter, Daniel Brinkley, JJ and Desiree Hertog, Sarah Breskman Cosme, George Norrie, Gail Thackeray, and many, many more. I will be hosting all weekend long, including the keynote Ancient Secrets panel on Friday night, 5 vendor and exhibit halls, 3 floors of speakers, panels, and celebration. This is the biggest event of the year, and early bird passes are available now. Just go to ConsciousLifeExpo.com for the schedule, speakers, and information. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com. Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest, Chris Plain. And yes, he is the head science writer over at the DeBrief. We're going to be talking science all night long. But before we get there, Chris, I'm a huge fan. I haven't been in many, many years, but comedy sports here in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now, and one of the things, the audience participation, right? And they would say, I'm going to put you on the spot here in a second, but they would say, okay, give us a word, and somebody would shout out cantaloupe, right? And then boom, the next thing you know, and the best stuff ever. I just love those shows. So,
and yeah, so that someone would, and then they would do a whole scene about a cantaloupe.
Right.
And if you had really talented sketch comedians, they would do something about, we have to have a wedding, because if my whole family isn't there, so we can't elope. And then they would take your thing and screw with it and take it a whole different direction.
It was awesome.
But yeah.
Now, so I'm going to throw out something to you, and I want your reaction. Dehydrated seaweed. Perfect.
Yeah. Can you put it in a bong? What? Dehydrated? So what you're telling me is somebody sat around and said, all right, we already have the worst tasting food on the planet in seaweed, but somehow people seem to keep eating it. And we need to find a way to drive those last few diehard spirulina eaters away.
Yes.
And so what we will do is we will just take the water out of it completely. Let's see them eat seaweed chuck.
Americans will buy anything. Let's do dehydrated seaweed.
Fantastic.
Well, okay. So anyway, there's a reason for that, and I'll tell you later after the show. Now, you brought up Jack Sarfati's name before the break. And, okay, so...
Have you had Jack on?
We've talked about it many times, actually. Okay,
you think I'm taking over the interview and talking on top of you? Oy Vejmir with him. That's all I'll tell you ahead of time, Jimala. Oy Vejmir with that guy.
The thing is about Jack is take his politics out of the mix. Okay, which is difficult to do. But take Jack's politics out of the mix. And what you are left with is thinking outside of the box that needs to be there in the world of physics. There's too much in the world of physics that is inside of the box, where they don't want to take chances or have conversations. Or maybe go against the grain of an Einstein, right? And wait a minute here, you can't do that. Well, you know what? You need to think sometimes out of the box, and that's what Jack Sarfati brings to the table. He's as crazy and as nutty as squirrel poop. There's no question about that. But we need Jack Sarfatis to be in the world of physics now, and so. The Jack Sarfatis of the world, and we start talking about anti-grav and anti-gravity and that technology, which we're going to get into the APEC conference in just a second, is that anti-gravity has to be the leading researched area of all of the black projects. That's the Holy Grail. How much of it have they achieved? Well, China just says they've developed an anti-grav room for lunar exploration, so they can get their astronauts in there, and they get to now that
using magnetic levitation.
But they floated frogs. So, but this has to be research that is going on right now, and the one that crosses the finish line first is the winner of all. Right? Okay. So now that's when we pull Jack Sarfati in. And some of his things, and his friends, I should say, too, as well. And the APEC conference, anti-gravity is the holy grail in most circles, isn't it?
There's no doubt about it. I will tell you, when it comes to Jack Sarfati and people like him, but Jack in particular, here's my take, and I'll make it quick before we go into APEC here.
You know I'm going to get an email before the end of the show.
It is highly possible that Jack knows something that everybody else doesn't.
I agree.
Now, I'm not saying it's likely or unlikely, but it is highly possible.
Yes.
And here's the thing with Jack. I've heard him in these discussions. I'm in an email chain.
I'm in that same email chain. Yeah,
right?
I'm with you. I'm in that chain.
So you see him arguing with other scientists at times. You can see Deepak Chopra in there arguing. You get these guys in there arguing. I've had the opportunity to speak to Jack. I've had the opportunity to talk to him at a conference for about an hour, face-to-face, digitally face-to-face. And no matter who you bring up that you can say, well, here's this expert that I trust, Jack, and they're not sure about your science. They just don't. He can tell you why. He will say, well, I'm an expert in this, this, and this. They specialize in this, this, and this. And what he tells you, if you say, oh, that guy's a astrophysicist and I'm a dynamic quantum astrophysicist with a side of chips, you go, okay, the part he said about this other guy is true. He does know, and scientists are so siloed into expertise, especially at those very high levels, that it's all, as somebody, as I explained earlier, attempting to come from a layman's point with the breadth of interest and communicate to people that are operating, in some cases, at these very high levels.
Oh, you just dropped. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, you're back. You dropped for a second.
Okay. Yep. So it's possible Jack is no doubt operating at a really high level. It is possible that he is seeing something and understanding something, because I can tell you when you talk to him, he believes what he's saying. In this business, you've been doing way longer than I have, Jimmy. You see the guy with the authentic, oil made from the best snakes, we used to say when I was growing up, right? This is oil, but it's made from the best snakes. You can spot these guys selling hokum a mile away. This guy truly believes it. And he's smart enough and specialized enough that as high up that ladder as I've climbed to try and understand these guys up here and these women that operate up here, and there's a lot of both, Jack is operating in such a high level and such a specialized understanding that it is altogether possible that he is losing his mind in his 80s to the fact that he sees the answer clearly. He will tell you, here's what it is, here's the formulas. And the government or DARPA or these sort of people just aren't putting the money into him. It doesn't mean that the science
dropped again. Okay.
Yeah, what is going on? Yeah, something's going on with my internet. It must be something going on in the other room.
That's okay. But let me say this, and then I'm going to get back to anti-grav. Last summer, somewhere in there, part of this group that you and I are part of, right? And so it happens daily. You get flooded with these algorithms and math that I clearly don't understand, and these conversations. So I wrote Jack, and I said, "Hey Jack, do I have your permission to send this to a physicist?" And he goes, "Absolutely, go." I said, "Okay." Yeah. So I took this stuff. And I sent it out to 3 different physicists at 3 different universities of, let's say, top 5 in the country. You know all their names, right?
Sure.
So, and my phone rings, and I see who it is. I went, oh crap. Okay. And I said, so you got the email? And he said, yeah. Now, I didn't tell him who it was, right? The email was, do you understand these equations and math? Do you understand what's going on here? That's all I wanted to know, right? Because I don't understand what Jack is throwing up there.
Me either.
Right. And this was the response. It looks like Jack Sarfati crazy talk. Whoa. Yeah. Now, I never said, it's Jack stuff, but that was the reply back. And I always found that interesting. And, I'm just going to leave it right there. But back to my point, you need guys like Jack to stir the pot. That's it. That's it. You've got to think outside of the box. Otherwise, we don't move forward. And
if every once in a while an ant doesn't wander away from the colony and find a new source of food,
they die.
The colony is doomed.
they die. The
colony is doomed.
So what have you learned about anti-gravity? How close are we?
So here's what's really interesting. So you brought up 2 completely separate things in this. One is the public face of it, and one is that secret black project area that we're not privy to. At least guys like you and I aren't. Maybe 1 or 2 of the guys I work with might know a couple of people. I don't know. I believe it is very possible that some versions of this are already being tested successfully within dark projects. Now, when I say some versions, I mean the science behind specifically defeating gravity. Specifically as a natural force, not, like you brought up the moon, the artificial moon that the Chinese government made and the Chinese National Space Administration. So I wrote about that the other day too. And they're using something that's within the scientific literature, where if you create the right type of a magnetic field, you'll align the rotation of the molecules and the atoms in the frog, for instance, or whatever, and you will float it. I'm talking about a fundamental understanding of how gravity works, where gravity comes from, where inertia comes from, and being able to defeat that. So on the public face, that is the question. There are mainstream scientists and experimenters from all across the spectrum that are looking into it at a level that has never been looked into. Sonny White told me about the warp drive, that there are grad students writing graduate theses about various ideas in warp drive. That's how, from one scientist writing about it less than 30 years ago to across hundreds of universities, grad students. The same thing is starting to trickle up with anti-gravity. My feeling is anti-gravity may be much more attainable, especially when I talk to these practical hands-on experimenters, than something like warp drive in the short term for us, because it really just is that. It's a fundamental force, and finding that key to unlock that and to counter that force, as you and I said, Jack thinks he's got that key. But I attended this conference and I wrote about it in the middle of the year called the APEC, the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference, and it grew out of one of those email lists you talk about, like the one with Jack Sarfati and these scientists that talk behind the scenes with each other about these more esoteric scientific concepts that maybe they can't talk about everywhere, but with each other in this kind of protected environment. And over time, that evolved. And when I talked to the founder of the conference, I was writing about him because he was a guy trying to build a UFO in his garage. And I said, nothing more interesting for my audience than a guy who's in his garage who says, I'm building a UFO, right? I said, hey, how am I not going to cover that? And he's got full-time funding and someone who's paid for a lab for him to do it. And it's not a family member. So I said, all right, I'm in. I start talking to this guy, and he tells me on the phone, he says, Chris, he tells me about how it grew out of this email list. And he said, you know, if you go through that list, half of the guys on that email are from DARPA. They're from the Skunk Works at Lockheed Martin. They're from NASA. They're from the Air Force Research. You talk about the places with the real money who are keeping their eyes on theory and practice, on what these people, the experiments they're doing, the ideas they're sharing, and they're in there doing the same thing. They're kicking around ideas. They're coming to these conferences. They had Glenn Tony Robertson, who ran the only anti-gravity experiments ever done at NASA. And there's arguments as to whether or not they had results. There was some stuff that ran after he left that may or may not have produced some results. But they built the benchmark for what a mainstream anti-gravity experiment might look like. So I'm talking to this guy who wants to build the spacecraft, and he says, we're going to do that test at our conference. And he tells me about these attendees. I said, Mark, send me the list of the attendees. And I start checking them out. I start going through that. Now, I don't remember if you were on there or not, Jimmy, on that first list I had. But I'm going through and I'm checking these people and I'm Googling them and going to their LinkedIn and in many cases emailing, confirming who they are. And literally exactly what he said. Half of a list of over 100 names were these mainstream people from these highly funded military, government. There's no CIA in there, but he would like to point out to me, he goes, hey, when you see some of these people from these private companies or other universities, they could very well be funded by these sort of intelligence agencies and stuff, and they're there, looking into what we're doing. But the ones with the mainstream resumes was literally actually just a hair over half of the names. The other half, a lot of mainstream business people who worked at places like SpaceX and things like really mainstream. And then there was this group of maybe 20 or 30 what I would call garage tinkerers.
Right.
Guys who had just enough means, just enough interest, and who preferred, as Mark would tell me, Mark Sokol, the guy who founded it, founder of Falcon Space, who founded this APEC conference, told me, I don't care about theory. I don't understand. I'm not a physicist. It's not my interest. I will take the planned tests. If they tell me here's an anti-gravity experiment, I will go buy the superconducting material. I will buy the magnets. I will build that thing in my shop and I'll test it, and it'll either produce anti-gravity or it doesn't. So although there's a lot of theoretical people that show up at the conference and talk about it, the backbone, the group that's really hands-on every day is these guys like him that physically try to make these experiments real, that physically try to build these different things. So when a guy like Sonny White says, here's how you build a little tiny warp craft, well, in their world, when someone says, here's a new idea, or an old one, like the Alzaphon experiments, right? Mm-hmm. Like these old anti-gravity experiments that may or may not have worked in the 80s or 70s or whatever, these more enigmatic and mysterious anti-gravity, but all rooted in real science at real universities. These guys are doing it. They're trying to build it. And so imagine that world. Imagine really cutting-edge people at top universities, people from DARPA, all these places, and then these hands-on guys just getting together once a month on Saturday to talk about experiments, talk about different ideas in this, talk about the M drive. I saw Robert Shearer there. That was one of, that magical drive that seems to defy physics and create thrust. And so, there's a community out there of people looking for that anti-gravity answer. And my feeling is, in the natural world, if there's a force, there is a cause and a way to counter that. So gravity is a thing. We know it's a thing. They can argue forever about how it works or what's gonna make gravity or anti-gravity. I think there's this public face where people are trying it. If I were in the black projects and I were the one writing the checks, I were the one overlooking the special access programs or the unacknowledged special access programs or whatever they want to call it, this is an area that has a fair amount of scientific literature and testable theories, and is something that I believe, like I said, I have some stories I'm working on in this area. Let's leave it at that. But I believe it's possible that there is stuff. I might even report on something that works at some point. We'll see. I don't want to go too far out ahead of myself.
Yeah, well, that was my next question.
I have researchers promising me things from time to time.
Right.
And this particular one is somebody I've written another story about. That'll narrow it down to about 150 people. But I had somebody tell me something in a phone call and in a couple of follow-up emails that makes me believe that there's a lot of people that feel like that's about to change. That this idea that there may be a formal government announcement, some black project, or it may just be that researchers at different universities working in really high energy and things like fusion and stuff are coming across this anti-gravity effect and are understanding, because that happens a lot in science, you know. If you take a pill for baldness, that was a blood pressure pill, right? Like, that was a blood pressure pill that they found grew hair. That happens a lot. Sonny White was working on custom Casimir effects with these microscopic things, and they found the warp bubble in there and went, oh, this is in our simulations, in our models, this thing's creating a warp bubble. And I think that's happening in physics, and I think there's so much high energy research, there's so much of this sort of stuff going on, both governmentally but also public, that I think we're taking away any conspiracy, any old school, oh, they had anti-gravity in the 40s, or any of these sort of things. I think science has progressed to the point where that is coming.
Do you think that the Tic Tac, if it was a real physical craft, ET or otherwise, right, terrestrial, that did represent anti-gravitic technology that possibly could have been created here on Earth?
There are really good, smart people looking into that. Physicists like Kevin Knuth and Ravi Koparapu. I'm trying to think of, there's a bunch of these guys at the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, and they've done a lot of that. And what's interesting is those are the two answers. Warp drive and anti-gravity are the two answers that best explain what you're seeing with the Tic Tac. In many ways, as I said, the energy requirements for it to move like it did, but the lack of it shedding energy in any spectrum, physical or light. I mean, if it would have made a huge flash of light, it could have shed its energy going from 80,000 feet to 50 feet that way, or a ton of heat, or an explosive force. Somehow it's got to shed all that energy. So even an anti-gravity model, it's probably less likely at that explanation than a warp drive. But the way the thing flew around, the way the thing was, I mean, it sure sounds like a magneto-hydrodynamic propulsion system that operates above water as opposed to in water, and may operate in and out of water, because magneto-hydrodynamic propulsion is something that's been around for 40 years, more than 40 years.
Yes.
And the idea of something that's a very light, very custom, very modern metamaterial, something that we design that has the right properties and has the right energy. I mean, for all we know, the Tic Tac weighs 4 ounces, right? And it's just this extreme metamaterial, and that accounts for the mathematics of the speed and dynamics, but the lack of energy coming out of it when it stops and zoops around.
Yeah, the whole thing for me, which gets confusing, is that apparently the Tic Tac, if it was real, was able to ignore our atmosphere and our known physics and the physical things that we have here, totally ignored and didn't give a crap. So what would...
and that's what matches the warp drive theory.
That's what matches the warp
low
drive.
power warp drive theory better, Jimmy, is that.
And here's the other part. If I want to believe that anti-gravitic ideas are real, I just look at two things. I look at magnets, which are definitely gravity-defying things.
Yep.
Number one. Number two, a gyroscope. And, there's not infinite amounts of negative energy being put into spinning a top or getting a gyroscope going where it can apparently just sit there and float. As long as it's got energy going into it, it's stable. That's not some crazy technology. That's something that's been around for a very, very long time. And the applications of magnetics and something that is spinning, we have the answers right there. And I think a very advanced mind would be able to take these to the next level.
And as I like to point out to people, as a guy who writes about science, 10 to 15 stories a week, typically at this rate lately, 150 years ago, we weren't really using electricity that well, right? Like we were right at the dot. We had no internal combustion engines, whatever. Right now, we're unfolding. The James Webb telescope's done unfolding. We're getting news back. I wrote a story yesterday about signs of life on Mars found by the Curiosity rover. I went, oh, yeah, that's right. That rover's up there, too, right? Like, it's just we got a couple of... I'm writing a story about a Chinese rover that's on the dark side of the moon. I went, that's right, 2 years ago that the Chang'e 4 landed the rover. Like, it is so commonplace in such a short time. Our technology is leaps and bounds. And whether you subscribe to an alien technology interference, Philip Corso Day at Roswell sort of theory, or just humans and growth of population and use of electricity and energy transforming the way we do things, whatever theory you get there, we're going real fast. We're going real fast. The technology is zooming. We are changing constantly so fast. Remember when we were kids and the Get Smart's on his shoe phone? And the idea was like, we may see that one day. I had a shoe phone when I was 25, and when I was 12, it seemed like the most insane thing ever. Yeah. And 15 years later, we got cell phones, right? You're carrying it around with you everywhere.
The Dick Tracy watch, right?
Right.
I got a drawer full of those now. It's like,
exactly.
That is where we are at today. Let's take our break right here, Chris. Stay right there. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Great conversation. When we come back, we're going to continue. Let's go to the search for E.T., James Webb Telescope, tests, everything that is going on right now. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, the X.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? UNX Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, If you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to getthetea.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's getthetea.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from Rivermoon. Just click on the Rivermoon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard. Available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Gold loves chaos, uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Chris Plain is with us. Tomorrow night, Fader Night. Open lines all night long. Dedicated to Clifford Mahooty, who left this realm yesterday at the age of 77. Tomorrow night, I've got a lot of pictures of Clifford, and we'll be sharing those. And, of course, you'll be doing the same thing. So that's tomorrow night. Tonight, it's Chris Plain. And just two words. Dehydrated seaweed. I'm making T-shirts. I'm going to make T-shirts. Dehydrated seaweed.
Sounds so good.
Yeah, it's just tasty, right? Just, I mean,
seaweed.
It should replace like French fries. You know, I'll take the Big Mac combo #1 with dehydrated seaweed, please, with sea salt. So anyway, James Webb and hold on. See, I have a cough button, but you can hear me cough. The audience can't.
No, I can't.
Yeah. Oh, you can't? So you can't.
When you pot down your cough button, I cannot hear you.
Oh, you couldn't hear that?
Nope.
Oh, wow.
But I saw it, and it was disturbing.
Yes, it was. Now, James Webb, out of everything that we have done, and I'm talking about technical advancements, I mean, just tremendous. A million things can be referenced that are just remarkable. But in my estimation, with the James Webb telescope, in combination with other things, it's not the only telescope we have out there right now, but the test system and so forth, may be the most significant advancement the human race has done to this point. In my opinion, the James Webb telescope is incredible, and so far so good. Right? So far so good.
Yep.
What's your take? What's your take on the James Webb telescope?
Here's what's amazing about this thing. Imagine scientists at the dawn of microbiology inventing the first microscope.
Right.
Right. Think of that, a tool that never existed, that is in every lab, that is the most basic, most fundamental tool necessary to do that sort of research. Well, when it comes to things like astronomy, we have tons of great tools on the ground. We have amazing, I'm Twitter friends with Professor Abel Mendez, who runs the Arecibo facility down there in Puerto Rico, where the movie Contact, and they're looking for alien signals. Our astronomy, the equipment, the satellites, the things we put up. But when it comes to looking into the cosmos, nothing beats being outside our atmosphere. Nothing. Being where this telescope is going is a point called Lagrange 2. And it's basically just imagine the Earth and the Sun in a direct line with each other. And when you continue from the Sun to the Earth, you continue for about another 1,000,000 miles. There's where James Webb is going to sit. And it's going to sit perfectly in the shadow of Earth. So here it is, 94 million miles from the Sun, a mere 1,000,000 miles from Earth, and it's perfectly protected from the solar radiation and the solar energy and the solar wind coming off of the Sun. So now it can do something where it can look deep into the cosmos by looking at infrared light. Without getting too deep into the woods of all of this, if the Hubble telescope, which was our most amazing, most groundbreaking, most innovative looking outward space telescope, the first really good one to take advantage of all the benefits I'm talking about, being in space outside the atmosphere. That was a visual telescope. So it took cool pictures and let us see really cool things and learn all kinds of things. This telescope, James Webb, is going to look at infrared light. And that is everything in the cosmos coming back to us from the past. So when you look farther and farther, you're seeing light that originated farther and farther back in time. So in a 13.8 billion year old cosmos, this telescope will let us look at things that happened 13.7 or so billion years ago. And really look at the first galaxies, their first formations, the first stars. So from a base level just tool, just like that microscope, it's just a tool that's never existed. And it is the most groundbreaking tool. For those of us that are really interested in the search for life outside of our little solar system, outside of our planet, it is a tool like we have never had. Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about UFOs. I'm not talking about, things in our atmosphere, things like that. That's a completely different discussion. I'm talking about looking at planets outside of our own solar system that are at the right distance from their star, that have just the right temperature. They call it the Goldilocks zone or the habitable zone. It's made of the right stuff. It's a rocky like Earth or Mars or Venus. It's not a big ball of gas like Saturn or Jupiter. It's not a big ball of ice like Neptune, right? But it's a chunk of rock with probably at the right place got water on it, just like Earth. So we can't see those, right? We know they're there. And you mentioned tests before we went to the commercial. We've used this thing called the Transiting Exoplanet Survey
Satellite.
Satellite, yes, to find these planets. The way we find them is called the transit method. You're looking at a star and all of a sudden it dims a little bit. Something passed between you and that star, right? A transit. So it's this long, complex way that we have found planets. But we found over 5,000, I think there are 4,600 that are official, but there's another couple thousand that are being sussed out. And when they suss those out, 80-90% of them pan out. So for this tiny amount of time that TESS operated, for the tiny amount of time the Kepler Planet Hunter missions operated, and from the little bit of data that Hubble can pull in this area, we figured out planets are everywhere. Everywhere we look, there's planets. Every star, or most of the stars we look, from types like ours to brown dwarfs to you name it, there are planets. And we see rocky ones everywhere. This telescope, James Webb, will be able to point dead on one of those planets. And although it can't take a picture of it yet, what it can do is when it passes in front of the star, when it makes one of those transits, the sunlight going, the light from that star going through the atmosphere of the planet, right? It will reveal what the chemistry of that atmosphere is through light spectra. So that telescope sees these different, and it goes, I see carbon dioxide, I see hydrogen, I see oxygen, I see methane, I see whatever they see in that atmosphere. And at least on Earth, and the planets that do have atmospheres like Saturn or whatever, like Saturn's moon Titan or some of the other, Mars has a very thin atmosphere, Venus has a heavy gaseous atmosphere. Certain chemicals and certain combinations and certain amounts seem to signal that there's life on that planet. Now, will James Webb look for spaceships? No. But what it will say is, I've started studying these rocky planets in the habitable zone up close, and either I'm seeing chemical signatures in the atmosphere that tell me something's cooking down there, something's alive, and it's breathing and it's creating these gases and these various chemicals, or it's not. It's things that we see with natural processes that we know. To even gather that set of data, we're going to have to look at hundreds, if not thousands, of these planets. We might find really telling signs really quick, right? Like there's some really good candidates like TRAPPIST-1 that has maybe 4 planets in the habitable zone. Imagine 4 Earths that were all more or less close enough to the sun that there are people or things living on each one of those. And maybe the closest one, it's really hot, and the farthest one, it's really cold, but it's still enough to have liquid water and to have life. So we're going to look at each one of those, and we're going to look at their atmospheres when they go in front of the star. And the same way telescopes picked up phosphine gas in the atmosphere of Mars and said, that's at a place that we always assume would be habitable for exactly the type of life that works anaerobically and puts off this exact sort of type of phosphorus known as phosphine, and it's in concentrations that seem like it would be made for life. So people can argue whether or not that's life, and until we fly something through there and scoop it up and check it out, we may not know. But what we do know is it matches what we understand about life, and it gives us a place to look. So when one of these warp drives or directed energy or plasma magnets or these really exotic propulsions I write about and study about at my job, when one of those is ready for us to send somewhere and send a probe into the atmosphere, we're going to have targets. And those targets will be found by James Webb. James Webb Telescope will be the one to give us a list of planets that says, this thing's habitable zone, this thing's the right size and shape, and it's got the right chemistry in the atmosphere that we think life is there.
How do you keep your brain from exploding with just the thought that 25 years ago we were still the only planet in the known universe, right? Right. To today where we have around 10,000 exoplanets and exoplanet candidates that are waiting to be cataloged, to being able to study the atmosphere of distant worlds. That is like it's almost too much.
Jimmy, with my schedule is a full one, like a lot of us adults have very full schedules. And when I was approached about working at the DeBrief, and I had that first conversation with MJ Banias, I had to make a decision. Like, this is going to consume a lot of time and a lot of energy. I'm going to have to delay the publication of the sci-fi book a year. And all these other personal life choices went into making that decision. But what clinched it for me was that we are living in a time like no other time. Scientifically, UFOs, I gave my whole rap on UFOs earlier, and I am convinced we're living in just a completely different time for that. But in the science community, in the technology community, the number of universities, the vast array of projects people are working on is so amazing and so tantalizing that when I discussed with them, hey, is this a UFO blog? Do you want me to write about the Maelstrom Air Force Base, and do you want me to write about Colonel Corson? They said, no. We want you to cover this stuff you're interested in. We want you to write about these scientific topics and try and be, I always tell people, I say, I'm like Neil deGrasse Tyson if he was dumber and funnier, right? So,
you're definitely better looking.
Yeah, right.
You got that going for you.
Which I might have put in an article where I picked on him once, but I only got 2 or 3 tweets about it, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, he's too easy of a target. He's too easy.
But I always say, guys like Michio Kaku or guys like Neil, they're in this enviable position to me to understand this complex science and communicate it to the everyday person. Even the one researcher who turned down the interview told me, your job does provide a significant science communications value. I just don't want to participate. And that's what I feel as I go, I'm the guy, whatever. Hey, right. I've been turned down before, not for interviews, but that was the first and last one so far. But yeah, I think that the idea that the James, when that they've been working on that thing for 30 years. I mean, when the Hubble went up, the first hit movie comes up, everybody has a party, and the next morning people go, so are we working on a sequel? James Webb is the sequel of all sequels. This is the Hubble times 1,000. This is so much capability, so much science. I, for one, have been on pins and needles every day since it launched, watching the tracker on YouTube where each little step happened, where each little thing happened, because we're right there now. Like, it's 94, 95% of the way there. I think it's got about 4 more days before it's on station. And within a couple of months, I think 2 months, if I remember right, I talked to the program manager at NASA, Elizabeth Cologne, months ago, and she said, Dr. Nicole Cologne, and she said, this will be the craziest 2 months where we're tuning the thing in and get it. But once it's online and it starts running through these things, there's a lot of cool astronomy. There's a lot of base level knowledge. But within all of these programs are these hunt for life programs. Bill Nelson, the head of NASA, said that when he was talking about UFOs. He said, when push comes to shove, this is the business we're in at NASA, hunting for life. And I'm writing an essay that's going to go in a compendium we're doing at the DeBrief at the middle sometime this year about that topic, about how this world of science and this world of UFOs are finally meeting in the middle, that the Venn diagram is overlapping, that there is a place where science presents so much evidence for life. Mainstream, traditional, Neil deGrasse times 1,000, like the most serious disbelieving scientists, will end up in a point very shortly where life is everywhere and the proof is scientific. So all that's left is, all right, we see all these planets with all these signs of life in their atmospheres. Now all we're asking is, if none of them would come here, why not? We're on the flip side of the Fermi paradox. We're like, they're everywhere. So why haven't they come here? And that's when the UFO people go, hey, dummies, we've been telling you for a long time that they're here. And the scientists go, oh, okay, maybe it's time to look at that seriously. And that's what's happened.
The comments, from like Radcliffe and some of these agency folks about UFOs and UAPs lately, all exciting. Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, the Senate, the DOD, ODNI, all great stuff. No question about it. But those comments from Bill Nelson 2 months ago, yep, I think were some of the most direct, because he didn't pull any punches. He went straight there, and I think it was one of the most significant statements on the topic of ET and UFOs that anybody has made in an official capacity. When you first heard those 10 minutes were extraordinary. Yes, right? What went through your mind?
That very first time he talked about it was he was on stage at a NASA event that nobody but nerds like me who get paid to write about it were watching, right? So when he kind of threw out those first few comments, I'm talking before even the more public video, but when he first kind of started addressing this, everybody went, holy crap, I wrote a story about it, few other news outlets got it. Within 48 hours, CNN had him on. And I don't remember who the interview was, but she sat down with him. And that's what really struck me. Those initial comments, I hate to say it, he's an older guy. He's a former astronaut, but he's a politician. Politicians oftentimes say things one day and are doing something completely else the next day, if not an hour later. So when he made those initial comments and I wrote about it and other people wrote about it, it was like, yeah, that's cool. Let's see if he follows up.
He stayed on mission, right?
Yeah, he's brand new at NASA. He's giddy at the job. Like he's got like the ultimate old man job. Like, hey, come over to NASA. You were an astronaut. Everyone likes you. You're relatively politically benign. Perfect fit. Everyone more or less liked him. The people at NASA have been looking for new leadership for a while. I think it was Bridenstine was there before then.
Yep.
So I just felt like there's a chance what we're hearing is he's giddy, right? He's goofy on the new job. He's like, hey, we're going to look for aliens too, because I was watching 60 Minutes and drinking sherry, and I went, hey, honey, you think them things are real? And I'm going to look for that because I'm at my new job and I can't.
Yes.
What happened was when he did the follow-up with CNN, he was very straight. She asked him really good questions. I actually wrote a second story about the same thing like 3 days later because he doubled down. And since then, he was at the event with Avril Haines and, she's the, ODNI, I think the new head of Defense Intelligence. I forget.
Avi Loeb.
Yeah,
and
he was at that event
Jeff
at the cathedral.
Jeff Bezos was there.
Was at the Washington National Cathedral.
Yes.
And when he was at that event, and I wrote about this in another article, I said the thing that really struck me was they were talking about the search for life in a conventional James Webb, dig the rocks up on Mars and bring them back and look for hey, we found an amoeba on Mars, woohoo, right? And he starts bringing up the Tic Tac and the military and the 3 videos that have been released and what he's hearing from pilots. And I can tell you it's the same thing we hear at the debrief from pilots. We're not always able to write about it, but I did write about when Ryan Graves, the Navy pilot who was a witness, told me. I talked to Air Force pilots, even though the Air Force itself has not been public on this issue. I talked to Air Force pilots, and this was in August, he told me. I talked to him last week, and they're still seeing it, right? Bill Nelson brought that up at that National Cathedral event. He did exactly what I'm talking about. Is he took this mainstream NASA's mission to look at meteorites and all these other places to really understand the cosmos, and within that, one of its missions is to look for life. To like, oh no, that's what we do at
it's
NASA.
our job.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
we search for light. So if they're here and they're in our atmosphere, it kind of shortcuts the search a little bit. But hey, who's not interested in skipping to the end if we can get to the end, right? I don't mind going through the process of Venus and Mars and gases and exoplanets because I grew up in a world where UFOs were so ridiculed. I just assumed that would never come to a head in my lifetime. The fact that it's coming to a head in a way that like people behind the scenes are going, yeah, I've seen this video. I've seen these amazing photos. I've seen these things. I say all the time, Lou Elizondo and his cohorts, for better or worse, create an information bubble that has to burst. We now know there's this longer video Congress saw. We now know there's all these things, at least the selected members in intelligence. So now that there's no longer is there a picture of the Calvin photo or is Nick Pope a goofball, right? No, it's real. It's there. We have it. That information is there. that bubble will burst at some point, whether it's Tim McMillan or Micah Hanks or one of these other reporters. Somebody's going to have that information. We're going to have that at some point. Or history goes down as really they shut this thing down like in a crazy way, like in a 1984 dystopian way.
Right.
I don't see coming. Because here's the last point I'll make on that. When I talk to mainstream scientists, a lot of them are younger than me now. And a lot of them are in their 30s and 40s, and some are even in their 20s. When Blue Book shut down, if you went around and surveyed every scientist, from those at the top to the ones down at Harvard University getting their bachelors, the general opinion, the general attitude about life, other planets even existing, much less life on them, but life on other planets, was a pretty ridiculous notion. It's more or less the de facto position of scientists. I talk to people about coral biology, and they'll tell me, oh yeah, corals talk to each other, and we think because of the dynamics of water, there might be some convergent evolution, and one of the things we might find up in Europa under the waters, we might find some coral, right? Or we might find some squids or what. It's just the place we're operating from. Just as my wife likes to say, older people with old ideas die and new people with new ideas are born.
Right.
And we have a world of people that have grown up that they didn't have to find in search of on videotape at the video store if they miss an episode. They can just go to the internet and immerse themselves like Dave Chappelle in UFO videos. So, yeah, we're in a whole new world with this. And, it's amazing. It really is amazing. The tools, this James Webb, from a conventional science standpoint, will change everything. And the UFO discussion is just in a whole new place. And, yeah, that's what's amazing. Like I said, I got hired at the DeBrief. I said, I'm not writing about UFOs, right? They said, no, you're writing about science. And halfway into my first year, the head of NASA is talking about UFOs. So who's going to cover that? It's my job, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'm covering it, and I see that more. My worlds are overlapping. My personal interest in UFOs and my professional responsibility to write about science are starting to overlap.
It's doing the same thing all around the world. Now, this is the deal. Chris, you're staying over for overtime. Okay, so you can tell your wife, I've got other stuff to do. I've got a date tonight with Jimmy Church, and I need another 20 minutes.
We've been together for 27 years. The best thing I can tell her is she has 20 more minutes without me. So you just made her know. Like when I walk out of the office 30 minutes from now, she's going to be like, tell Jimmy I love him already.
She's the best. Let's take our break. We've got more to talk about. And here's, as we roll into the break, an astronomer a year ago, Chris, in this documentary, the question was, when will you find your next exoplanet? And she goes, when I go to work tonight.
Yep.
That's what it's like. I know, right? Let's take our break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Overtime is next.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's your girl Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church, and I personally invite you to the 2022 Conscious Life Expo this February 4th through the 7th, live at the LAX Hilton in Los Angeles, California. This year, we have the most exciting speakers, including Linda Moulton Howe, Jacques Vallée, Whitley Strieber, Adam Apollo, Billy Carson, Daryl Anka and Bashar, William Henry, Caroline Corey, Susan Slaughter, Daniel Brinkley, Sarah Breskman Cosme, George George Norrie, Gail Thackeray, and many, many more. I will be hosting all weekend long, including the Keynote Ancient Secrets panel on Friday night, 5 vendor and exhibit halls, 3 floors of speakers, panels, and celebration. This is the biggest event of the year, and early bird passes are available now. Just go to ConsciousLifeExpo.com for the schedule, speakers, and information. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at jimmychurchradio.com.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? Unex Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNXDB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30 days free on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
This is Kristen, Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Overtime with Chris Plain. You saw this coming. Nobody's surprised. There's no way the show was ending. What a great conversation tonight. And, Chris, when we get to overtime, I like to loosen up a little bit, although we've been pretty loose tonight. Dehydrated seaweed. I'm just going to say that one more time. And you're going to get some blowback about dehydrated seaweed tomorrow from one of your coworkers, but we'll save that for another time. Okay, so yes. Is Star Trek. Now, before we get into this, I like the OG Star Trek. Okay, all right. That to me is
Kirk Clockbones.
But Star Trek Discovery, messed with my head. That was just absolutely amazing. And season 3 is getting ready to launch, and I'm very excited about that. But Picard, I don't have the time to invest into that. But I certainly thoroughly enjoyed Star Trek Discovery.
Awesome.
Just great. But your article, 7 Star Trek
technologies that are nearing reality, something along those lines.
Along those lines. And I want to go down this list with you if we can, because just recently, I don't know if you caught this, but it made it into the media that the tricorder is now perfected. You know, it's here and now.
So what tickled it's interesting you would use the tricorder. What tickled this idea for me was Micah Hanks had written a story at the DeBrief about how scientists were using a helicopter and they could fly over the ground, and using certain sets of readings, they could tell if there was life down there. Now, anybody who's watched Star Trek of any type can tell you that the ships pull up into orbit, then they go, I'm picking up signs of life. Or as you said, they're walking around on some orange planet or something, and they've got their tricorder in their hand, and they go, I'm picking up signs of life. Now, there's also the medical application of tricorder. You get right down to somebody's body, and you're scanning their body. That's a whole other thing. But I can tell you that the thing Micah wrote about was this remote sensing of life. And I said, man, that's right out of Star Trek. And I thought of the communicator, right? We were talking about cell phones earlier. And I went, hell, we've had that for a while. And then I thought about the computer on Star Trek on the ship. That you would, computer, right? Scotty would say, computer. And then the computer would respond. And that was, of course, Gene Roddenberry's wife, Majel Barrett, did the computer voice for like 5 of the series, I think. But we already have that, right? We have Alexa, we have Siri. So it just triggered that idea. I said, what Star Trek technologies have already come true, and which ones are likely or could possibly come true? And are there any that just seem impossible? And so that was the genesis for that story. It came from Micah. It came from my love of science fiction, and I the term I use all the time when speaking about scientists is I say good science fiction makes for great science. And it's completely true, because when you talk to scientists, there are very few, if any, especially in things like propulsion or fusion energy or these very edge ideas that weren't heavily influenced by science fiction growing up. So I thought, man, let's go take a look at Star Trek and see what else, now that we have the computer you can talk to, and we have the communicator, and he's reporting that we have the tricorder, as you pointed out, or the life sensor. What do we do next? What's the next stop? So I've started breaking them down.
I'm looking through. I have some photographs of me with the original communicator.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm doing here. And you know what? Just like anything else, I'm not going to find it. And
what are you looking for? My article?
No, a picture of me with the original. And also,
I thought you meant you already had it.
No. Okay,
Can't
so
find it.
Well, and just like the communicator, and going back to '68 and flipping that thing up. If that isn't, just a Motorola flip phone, then there isn't another. And we never imagined that it would be as common as milk in the refrigerator, right? It's like that.
I think the first customized ringtone had to be flipping open your phone and have it do the communicator sound.
Yes.
I mean, I saw people build that in later as the ringtones became more popular. Yeah, it's like I talked about with the shoe phone, or as you said, with the wristwatch phone. Just so out there concepts, but technology is moving so fast that in our lifetime, guys like you and I went from like dude, my friend has cable TV where you don't have to pick it up on an antenna to like, the weather's bad, my satellite's a little scratchy today, right? You know, from a effing satellite you're getting your. So yeah, I
know.
So, well, you told me to loosen up.
Yes. Well, so let's go down this list.
All right. So I don't have it right in front of me, but I can do most of them from memory, I think. So first of all, I looked at food replicators, right? Because there's something in the Star Trek world where you walk at the machine, you go tea, Earl Grey hot, or you say, give me a lasagna, light on the cheese, and boom, it's there, right? So that technology in the TV show seems to use something like the transporter beam, where it's materializing the food. So that technology doesn't exist. But what I did find was these essential like 3D printers that have been customized to put food out in various proportions and various collections, to where there's actually a couple of these restaurants, including one in New York, that you can go to that offers 3D printed food. And you just say, give me a hamburger and fries, and it prints the closest approximation of that from the right ingredients. Wait,
slow. This isn't real.
Yeah, so it's not going to make you a hamburger and a bun that you're not going to look at it and go, but think of a frozen food tray when you tear it open, right?
Yeah.
And you've got your brown glop, your green glop, your yellow glop, and your white glop. This will make that kind of army ration food from different foods that are in there that are cooking within this machine or have been put in there that are cold, vegetables and things. And yes, they're using it at a handful of hospitals where it's basically a robot replacing the cook, right?
So you could say like chicken soup.
Yeah.
And it's going to make you a chicken soup.
They basically give you a menu of what's available in that machine, right?
Right.
So at the restaurant, they give you a menu and you pick from the things that are available. And yes, if you say, print me, enchiladas, it'll print enchiladas. If you say, print me a veal, if that's what's in the machine is meat paste, it's going to print you a veal.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it's that was the first one I looked at. That's the closest we are.
Would you eat? Okay, let me ask you, man. Would you eat the food?
Is that a fat joke, Jimmy? No.
Is that? Oh,
I'm just kidding.
But you know what I mean? It's one thing to enjoy the technology. A sushi, conveyor belt restaurant, which I've been to. I'm reticent to eat the sushi. I'm fascinated with the technology, right? But I need my sushi chef to prep this in front of me.
I think real food, like you want a cut of a steak that has the meat fiber, it's real steak, or you want, especially with animal proteins, I think seafood you're talking about there, I think there's no doubt, like, that's the last on the list is 3D printed meat. But I think across a lot of the other things, like, for instance, if you get a box of cookies at the store, that's 3D printed cookies. That's just a big machine that's much larger that automatically mixed the ingredients in the right proportions, churned it up, spit it out a little tube, a machine cut off each one, and now you have a tray of cookies. So it's just a much bigger 3D printer, but essentially automated food manufacturer like that for boxed foods and pastas, a lot of things, is already kind of done on a larger scale. So that's what you're really getting, is little tiny food factory / kitchen.
So 3D printed veal parm, right? I know, right? Now,
pate, right?
And that's what it would be, right? So your eyes are closed, you're blindfolded, and somebody puts a spoonful of that in your mouth, and it's got the texture of pudding or paste, but it tastes like veal parm. What's the concern? What's the difference?
It depends on which part of the world you're in and what hospital you're in, right?
Yeah.
Like if they're serving this at the barracks, you're like, this is better than a Tuesday.
Yeah,
right. But if you're serving this on Rodeo Drive at a cafe, yeah, you're probably going to have a clientele that's not appreciating the 3D printed lamb chop.
You remember in 2001: A Space Odyssey, Bowman is sitting there. He's eating. He's got his, and the picture of like peas is on the top, and a picture of beef, and he's peeling. Anyway, but it looks like refried beans, right?
Yep.
That's what it looks like. And he's taking it, and he's dipping it in the sauce, and he's eating it.
Totally.
And
probably Soylent Green is probably an option on that machine.
That's
as well.
right. That's right. That's where I'm going. Okay, what's next?
So I'm going to jump all the way to the end of the list because this is the most compelling. When I said 7 Star Trek technologies potentially coming true, there are 6 that were from highly viable, like sensing signs of life from a distance, something that's been proven and could be applied. Something like a photon torpedo, right? Like a photon torpedo is just a torpedo with antimatter in it. We know how to make antimatter. We have a hard time collecting a lot and keeping it for a long time, but we're right at the beginning of antimatter science. So at some point we'll be able to harvest it and make enough that, humans, if we harvest enough of something that's explosive, we will put it in a bomb and shoot it somewhere. So the photon torpedo. So you go down the list and there are these the warp drive is pretty esoteric, but can get there. At the end of the list is the transporter.
Yes.
At the opening of tonight's show, Jimmy posed the thought experiment where his brain was taken apart one cell at a time and reassembled outside of itself, and what that would be like. So the idea behind a transporter is just that it scans your entire body down to the smallest subatomic particle at the exact moment, and then it uses that to make a copy, like a computer blueprint of Jimmy Church. Then it sends that copy to wherever the other side of the transporter is, and just like the food replicator, it uses matter and energy to rebuild Jimmy Church exactly the way he was when it zapped him away, right? So that's if you go to the Star Trek lore and you read that's the technology they're proposing. A much more advanced method of exactly your thought experiment, taking you apart one piece at a time and putting you back together as someone else.
Right.
But in this case, it's a pattern. So first of all, there's a thing called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Right?
Yep.
And Dr. Heisenberg was driving down the street and the cop pulled him over and said, "Do you know how fast you're going?" He says, "No, but I know where I am." So the point is, with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, when you measure something, you can measure one thing about it. You can measure its location, you can measure how fast it's moving, and of course, at the atomic scale or even the quantum scale, things are in constant high-speed motion. So the idea of measuring, just the measuring part of a transporter, just scanning you and getting a perfect copy of you down to every cell that could be replicated somewhere else, just seems to violate physics and seems to be beyond something you can engineer. The thought experiment side of it says this: if you were able to do it, if you could scan Jimmy, you could get every molecule, every atom, every proton, neutron, or electron exactly, and you then essentially demolish it, vaporize it as you see the people's fists away, it reappears on the other side, and that new you is not you. You were just killed. Okay, so what happened is a new you was just made, but the thing about the new you is it has every memory, every experience from a material level, has everything that was you. So it is very likely that the new you will think it's you. That it will be like, yeah, I remember stepping in like everything in my life, stepped in, they hit the button, now I came out the other side. But the truth is, every time you step in the transporter, you're probably dead. And they even kind of dealt with it in a couple of Star Trek. You said you didn't watch Next Generation. They had one where there was a transporter accident. Riker essentially got replicated twice. So he came back to the ship, and one of him got left behind on another planet. And boom, you got 2 of them. Well, of course, neither one is the real him, because the real him,
was
died
already
the
killed.
first time he used the transporter 50 years ago.
Right,
yeah.
right.
And each version is just a copy. So there's that, and then there's the copy of a copy of a copy. So even if you are getting really close to high fidelity of scanning everything really close, and you're replicating it really close, like the next Jimmy Church you make might have like blonde hair, right? Or might be missing an arm or something or whatever. So the transporter was the one technology of everything. I mean, tractor beams, photon torpedoes, you name it, warp drives. There are viable, realistic options for doing all of those things that seem to fit, again, 150 years of real science. Like, the late 1800s when we got really into advanced physics and advanced sort of thing. So in that time and in our understanding, all of those seem possible. The transporter between Heisenberg and between, that. Now, what I think is not impossible is something like, think of the Tic Tac turned vertically, right? And it's, what are you, 6'9", Jimmy? Right? So
yes.
Yes. So 6'9", Bill Brasky, 6'9", 280. And it's like a thing that you could step inside and you could be sealed, and that thing could operate essentially like a warp drive, but instead it would have a wormhole that connected you to another location. You could be then transported like a transporter instantaneously from one location to another, and you would retain the you-ness of you. You would still be, if you were Christina Gomez and you stepped out there, you wouldn't be some crazy Christina Gomez that appeared on the other side. It would still be you because you stayed intact the whole time.
Yeah, you don't want to be the 10th copy of a mixtape.
Right? Especially if you already started out like not that great.
Yeah, not that great.
I mean, you're right.
You're
like,
right.
Like the 10th copy of Rob Lowe still looks pretty good, but the 10th copy of Jonah Hill, maybe we're getting into a rough area.
Yeah, well, and so that was one of the things about the transporter that, and it was also addressed really well in Galaxy Quest, but that you are committing murder. Yes. Whoever is... you remember Scotty with the with the lever, right? And you're phasing, you're committing murder because whoever is there, it's being replicated. You can't have two yous. You've got to do something with the original body,
right?
Right? And I don't know where they're disposing them of. But
Hugh Jackman in The Prestige would replicate himself and just have the other one fall through the floor and fall into a tank and suffocate and die, drown and die, and they bury it somewhere.
Because that's how it would have to occur, right? Now, but the other part with the original ideas of Star Trek was you were actually transporting the body. You were demolecularizing. Is that a word?
Yeah, but so I looked into this pretty close, and actually, in the original Star Trek, it's very possible what you're saying, that they were breaking it down into little pieces, moving it to the other Petri dish, and reassembling it like you're talking about.
Right.
I do think that was the original theory. By the time it got to the 80s and you got to Next Generation, and the writers, some of these great writers, D.C. Fontana, I mean, people don't even know, like, guys like George R.R. Martin, he was writing on Stargate, but these like really great, smart science and fantasy writers would work on these TV shows, and they wanted to make it all scientifically consistent. So Next Generation and everything after, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Picard, Discovery, all of these Enterprise, they all have a scientific foundation for what is the warp drive, how does it work. On the original series, it wasn't that well spelled out.
And the other part of this, we've just got 2 minutes left, so I'll make this quick, is that the idea of the warp drive, which was originally presented in 1968, that was science fiction. It was an idea. It was written into the script, and there you go, right? Well, NASA scientists and engineers that are working on this today said, dude, it was just suggested. It's just an idea. But you give us the idea, that's all we need. Give us the idea and then let us go and work on it. And so all of these conversations that we have today about warp drive, fantastic, but we have to give the recognition where this came from. It came from a TV series.
Jimmy, when I talked about that string of scientists, where you have the theoretical physicists thinking up the crazy stuff,
right?
The applied physicists figuring out how to apply those thoughts, and then the hands-on engineer actually doing it, right? That string, if you continue back the other direction, before the theoretical physicists in that chain are science fiction writers and creators. They have, throughout history, been out there looking into their own heads, looking into the cosmos, looking into these super esoteric concepts. In the early days, a lot of them were scientists, you know, guys like Arthur C. Clarke wrote a lot of, Carl Sagan, but there were a lot of these original Asimov, and these writers were just sci-fi writers that just looked into the future and said, what are robots going to be like? Well, they would have to have 3 laws. They would have to have the, you know, and they looked at this, and as we get 100 years later, and we're building AI, and we're thinking about the idea of a robot, we're going, maybe the 3 laws were a good idea, or maybe something akin to like protect us from these superhuman beings we're getting ready to create robotically and artificially. So yeah, like that's that looking forward side. That's what science fiction has done. And I said it at the beginning of this segment, good science fiction creates great science, and that's how that happens.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I was a big fan, still am, of Arthur C. Clarke, and I haven't read everything that he has put out, but the stuff that I have read of his, which is a lot, I've actually read multiple times. I go back.
Rama.
Yeah, Rama. I don't even know how many times I've read the Rama series of books.
So
oh man, right? And when you think about Rama, and then you go to Oumuamua, or you know, and what that represents, and Arthur C. Clarke laid it out for us in the Rama series of books. And in 2001: A Space Odyssey, especially when we talk about Europa today, or Titan, and these possibilities, this was laid out by Arthur C. Clarke a long time ago. And monoliths on the moon and Mars, and if you think about it, I'll leave you with this: Göbekli Tepe.
Yep.
And what Göbekli Tepe represents is exactly what Arthur C. Clarke wrote about. Deliberately
100%.
buried. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. 10,000 years ago, 4,000 years before the Jomons or some of even the earliest organized societies, 7,000 years before the first megaliths, and here they were building these amazing temples in Turkey 10,000 years ago.
And then deliberately buried them.
Yep, you got it.
Crazy town. Chris Plain, you're the absolute best, man. How often, is it like every day you get published?
So, yeah, starting at the beginning of November, I took over the news desk at the DeBrief. So every day I will put out 2 or 3 short stories. And by short, they're still, 600 to 800 words. They're still a legit 5 to 7 minute read. I do 3 of those. Those are usually what's happening in science news, right? Those are the, hey, they just announced they found this gas on Venus, or they just announced this thing on Mars, or a company just test flew their first personal flying saucer I wrote about the other day. Like whatever. There was a handheld rail gun. I wrote about a new smart gun. Whatever that cutting edge science and tech that I feel would intrigue our audience, but is a one-story story often. So those stories come out every day. There are 3 of those a day. We have another writer that does 2 of those a day, like 4 days a week as well. So a lot of the base level news and science and tech that we feel represents the DeBrief, that is that bleeding edge, that very forward-looking futurism sort of look. That's what I do every day. Like the other guys who founded the team and brought me on very early, Micah, MJ, and Tim McMillan, I also write features. So the bigger stories you were talking about, that Star Trek one, the one about the Anti-Gravity Club, the Warp Bubble one, those are features that, just like any investigative reporter, I just work on in the background. So I send emails out, I talk to scientists, I arrange interviews, I build that, and when those are ready to come to fruition, I go over on Twitter and tease them a little bit and put them out. So I do have a couple of good ones coming here in the next 2 to 3 weeks that I'm really excited about. Those can come anywhere from once a month to 2 or 3 a month. But, yep, that's what I do over there.
Congrats, man. Much success. The DeBrief has quickly become a centerpiece of this community and the rest of the media.
Can I tell you one more thing, Jimmy? Before
you can do whatever you want.
I'm not going to... We have a very big guest columnist coming up at the DeBrief, and that's all I can say, or I'll be fired in the morning. I've already come close to getting fired there twice. I'm not going to tell you anymore, but, you know, Avi Loeb has written a couple of features for us. You know, some pretty, like, New York Times best-selling science fiction writers have written stuff for us. Like, we've had some really high-up people. But there's somebody I think a lot of people have wanted to hear from for quite some time now that approached us, and I think specifically approached Tim. I'm not 100% sure, maybe Micah. You know, those guys, they're like the wizards up on the mountain at the DeBrief. And said, I've got a piece for you guys. And the last thing I will tell you is it's long and it's on target. It's about something the UFO community has been talking about for a while. And it's somebody... Man, like there are days I come to that job and, you know, we're on that group chat 24/7 because Tim's over there in Germany. We got people on the East Coast, West Coast, in between. We got a whole team, DeBriefs across the country and across the world. We really have a growing team. A couple of writers in England. Jazz Shaw does stuff for us out in New York. And when I come into that group chat, I see what's going on, and I get shared something like this, I get giddy. I go, this is why when they reached out to me last year and they said, hey, would you be interested in doing some writing for us? And, I had met Tim on Twitter. I had met MJ on Twitter just talking about UFOs. And I went, okay, you know what? Let's give it a try. We'll give it a few months. And here I am 13 months plus later, still writing there. And when I come into work and I see these sort of things, my head explodes.
I cannot
when researchers
wait.
tell me stuff on the phone that they go, Chris, you're going to have this story in 3 months, and they give it to me, my head explodes at this job.
Thank you so much, Chris. Now you've got my attention and everybody else. So let the rumors
it's
start.
Coming soon. I'm going to say weeks, not months, maybe 2 weeks.
Thank you so much, Chris. Chris Plain, thank you so much. And much success. Much success. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2022 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Fader Night, open lines all night long, dedicated to Clifford Mahooty. Until then, I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.